Alright folks, I've been asked to do a wee video it's for expats for Scottish independence. It's a group of folk living overseas and we're basically talking about United Kingdom politics, what's going on, and in particular Scottish politics and everything that's been passed in the last week in regards to the NHS and the trade deals and the attack on Scottish democracy through the powers that are coming back for Europe. So, why am I doing this video in the first place? Well, I've been getting asked a few times why I care about Scottish politics so much when I'm living overseas, so I want to just address that issue right now and get it done with because I'm sick getting asked the same bloody question. So for me, it goes back to 2014 and the Scottish independence referendum and the lies for the Better Together campaign. And that's one of the things I want to address because it coinherently ties in with what's happened this week with the NHS legislation and the trade deals and the power grab on the Scottish Parliament. So, first things first, the NHS, the trade deal that passed, the legislation in regards to the trade deal. So, what is it? Well, it is essentially that any trade deal that is set up with the United Kingdom and any other foreign country, in particular America, the NHS will be on the negotiation tables. It will be part of the deal, and any trade deal that's set up with America, the NHS will be on the table. The main aim of these Tories is to privatise our NHS, and that's what's passed through last week. There's no veto for the Scottish Government, the Welsh Government and the Northern Irish Government. They do not care what these governments say, they're going to steamroll it through. This is why they set up this internal market. It's another reason why they can take these powers that the Scottish government currently hold as part of Europe, the 111 powers which are going to steal back to London. That is the second point I want to make. It's an attack on the Scottish Parliament. That's the same Parliament that we voted for in 1979. The Tories were staunchly against it, refused and put the double handbrake on. The voter turnout was too low, so they managed to put it back till 1997 when we voted on it again. 75% of people in Scotland voted for that Scottish government to take place. And so we got the Tories attacking the Scottish government, trying to steal these powers back to London, and the attack on the NHS to try and privatise it with any future trade deal with America. And the American pharmaceutical companies are rubbing their hands, and the Tories are rubbing their hands as well, because they know the money's coming both ways. So back to the Better Together campaign. The lies with the Tories and the Conservatives working hand in hand, side by side with each other. The red and the blue Tories, side by side, promised Scotland as part of that referendum. So that's where it starts for me in politics. As a Scottish Labour voter up until the 2014 referendum, that was the final straw for me. It was curtains when they sided hand in hand with the Tory party. And now we see the demise of Labour, for a party that had up to 58 seats in Westminster representing Scotland to a party that has one seat in Westminster with the British nationalist Ian Murray. And so they've only really got themselves to blame for the people switching to a party that's pro-democracy. And so we find ourselves in a position now where the polls are going 54% for Scottish independence, and the union's in panic, and the propaganda and scare tactics are coming back immediately to try and protect the failing union, the anti-democratic union. So the powers that they've stolen back, there's a few different powers which they involve, but we are currently in control of the powers right now, and very soon when this internal market's set up, we're going to be in a really bad position where it doesn't matter what Scotland thinks, it doesn't matter what Wales thinks, and it doesn't matter what Northern Ireland thinks. It's not an equal union, it's not union equals like they promises, it is essentially a dictatorship. And if England wants something, they will get it. They will force it through with the 88 seat majority they got with the Conservatives. They will force the Brexit through that Scotland voted against by 62%. So we're in worrying times. The trade deal with America has already been shot down in flames. The Americans have said they've got an election this year. It's not going to happen. There's not going to be any trade deal in place between the United Kingdom and America. They're putting all their eggs into one basket to get this trade deal with America. They're going to rip up the NHS as part of that trade deal, which Donald Trump has already openly said. with a meeting with Theresa May a while back, and we've got 8% of these trade deals set up that we had existing as part of the European Union. We're in July now. We've got 6 months to sort this shit out, and the Tories, they can't even control they're making an absolute mess of the coronavirus. I don't want to talk about the coronavirus too much because it's people's lives we're talking about here, but we got to look at the figures recently and the difference between the Scottish Government and how they handled the things in comparison to the English Government. The English, there's still, in the month of July, over 1,000 deaths. Scotland's had 0 deaths in the last 12 days. So there's a vast difference between how things can be run, and it gives us an insight how Scotland could run its independent country a lot more smoothly and viable than part of the United Kingdom. Anyway, back to the lies of the Tory party and the Labour Party in 2014, the promises that they told us were going to happen. The first and main promise was Scotland's going to have more devolved powers. We're almost going to run a federal state as part of the United Kingdom. The second lie, a vote for Scottish independence, is a vote to leave the EU. Now, we break that down and put it into context in the day's life. They're attacking our powers right now. They're trying to take 111 devolved powers back to London. The very next day after that referendum, they stood up and they said that we weren't getting any more powers. It was all just a lie the whole time. But in fact, they were going to stop Scottish people voting, or Scottish politicians voting on English matters. But English politicians can vote on Scottish matters. I mean, that's fair enough if you're in London and you're in Westminster. The second lie was a vote for Scotland to leave the United Kingdom was a vote to leave the EU. Now we know that Scotland's getting dragged out of the European Union against their will, even though 62% of people in Scotland voted to stay in the European Union. And so the problem we got here is we're going to get dragged out of the European Union against our will. The second point is the Scottish economy is going to get hit the hardest because for every pound that we send to the European Union, £20 comes back. And that's one of probably the main reasons why Scotland voted to remain in the European Union, because it vastly affects our economy and is beneficial to our economy. The trade deals itself, the United Kingdom was just negotiated a trade deal just recently. The Japanese are back on our tail. We want to renegotiate a trade deal because they know we're vulnerable. We're in a terrible position. We've got 8% of the existing trade deals we had with the European Union set up, when we've only got 4 months to sort this shit out. Where it's going to be a catastrophic no-deal Brexit. They still haven't got the border, the transitional border controls in place. They're not going to have them in place. Northern Ireland's going to have a hard border, which they specifically lied and promised Northern Ireland there wouldn't be a border. There's going to be a border in the north, in the Irish Sea, and so it was just lies. Very similar to the scare tactics and the promises that the Labour Party and the Conservatives told us. What did they tell us? Well, they told us that our pensions wouldn't be safe. They intimidated the older generation of Scotland that their pensions wouldn't be safe. They said there would be HMRC job losses. It was a lie. They promised us more shipbuilding at the Clyde. They gave us half in the scrap. It was a lie. They promised the banks would pull out. It was a lie. They went around the world, 34 different countries, convincing every other country to speak out about Scottish independence being bad. They even got Barack Obama on his side and said as much. And every single political newspaper, with the exception of the National, was SNP bad, Independent Scotland bad, the usual stuff that we see broadcast on the BBC every single day. Now, 2014, they promised us all this stuff, and the main thing that's mainly swung the vote was the devolved powers, which is something that they promised Ireland back in the day as well, and Ireland pushed hard to tell them to fuck off, and they became a republic, Ireland. Back to the 2014 referendum, it's they won the vote on the basis Scotland, if they did vote to leave the United Kingdom, they'd be voting to leave the European Union. A lot of people at the time didn't want to do that, and the Scots were happy with getting more devolved powers and running this federal state. And the next day, David Cameron stood up and said it wasn't happening. So it was a lie. They won the vote on the basis of lies. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. And now we find ourselves in a position where we're getting dragged at the European Union against their will. The polls are 54% in favour of Scottish independence. The people want it. There's a revolution taking place. Boris Johnson's coming up to Scotland just last week to try and save the Union. And people are realising that the promises that they made were a lie, and that Scotland can run their country much better. Like every normal civilised country in the world is an independent country. And that's something that I genuinely believe is possible. Now, I just want to touch on the myths that Scotland is subsidised by the United Kingdom. This one really gears me up because it's far from the truth. Even before oil was found in the North Sea in the 1970s, Scotland has subsidised the rest of the United Kingdom. We generate £64 billion in tax revenues every single year, and we send that to the London Treasury, and they send us back £35 billion. So there's a massive difference in money there which gets kept in London and gets spent on our behalf on stuff which is not relevant to Scotland. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean the £100 million a year which gets spent on Trident, the £200 million a year that gets spent on Trident, the £200 billion that Scotland's been enforced to take part in as part of the renewal of Trident. It's £200 billion in total, the recost. And the HS2 link for London to Leeds is £8 billion that Scots are going to have to pay for. It has no benefit to Scotland whatsoever, not one single thing. It doesn't come anywhere near the Scottish border, so why we're paying for it I have no idea. And you've got the House of Lords, and there's loads of other stuff. Some of the money is set aside for pensions and foreign affairs, that's fine, but there is a vast amount of money which Scotland gets essentially doesn't see the reward of that money. And you've got to take into consideration the oil tax revenues, which 96% of UK oil is in the North Sea and the Scottish Seas. We get 8.4% of that population share. The whisky, £5 billion industry made in Scotland, and only Scotland, we get 8.4% population share of that whisky. It's our whisky, we make it, and we should get the revenue for that to run our own economy. I just want to touch base on what happened since 2014. The Pro-Independence Party has won the 2015 election, the 2017 election, the 2019 election, the European elections and the Holyrood elections. But ever since that vote, the Scottish people have realised the lies that they were told. And we've been trying ever since that day to rectify that decision. And the Tories have got the double handbrake on. And they're trying to push and push and push. They refused the Section 30 order. We've asked for it 3 times. We should not have to be asking for a Section 30 order. The Union was set up in 1707 with Scotland and England. That is what the United Kingdom is. That's what that Union Jack flag is. It's Scotland and England. It was a voluntary union where Scotland and England joined. And there's nothing in the union agreement that says that one partner cannot leave. It cannot be held in a union against its will as a prisoner. And that is essentially what's happening right now. The polls are showing 54%. It's rising every day that passes, and it will continue to rise as long as democracy is not upheld in Scotland. We deserve a government that we vote for, and we don't get it. We get what England tells us. That's as simple as that. The English will vote for the next 50 years for Conservatives. So what are we going to do? Are we going to just accept that? We've not voted for the Tories in 65 years. Every democratic country in the world should get the government it votes for. Scotland is the only one that I can think of that does not get the government it votes for. It is undemocratic, and it's against everything in the UN. So we find ourselves in a really bad position where we're going to get dragged along with the Brexit we never voted for. And most importantly, not just Brexit, but no deal Brexit. Catastrophic to the Scottish economy. We're going to hit the hardest of any country in the United Kingdom. And we're the only country that doesn't get what we voted for. So there's no equal union. There's no such thing as an equal union. It's a dictatorship. That's exactly what it is. And until ordinary Scots start realising that, we're in a really bad position. The myth about Scotland being subsidised by England, again, I just want to touch on it briefly. We've got 96% oil in Scotland is in the North Sea. The oil fund that should have been set up, like the Norwegians set up, they've got an oil fund of £2 trillion. As part of the coronavirus package, they're using that money. That money, the tax revenues for the oil, was squandered by the London government, and we do not have 1 penny. We could have been funding our economy with that tax money for that oil fund, like Norway but we're not. We're borrowing money. We're borrowing money that we shouldn't have to be borrowing because it's been squandered by Tory MPs. So yeah, per population, we generate a lot of money. We got 25% of the exports for the whole United Kingdom comes from Scotland to a population share of 8.4%. So let's get this myth about Scotland being subsidised by the rest of the United Kingdom to fuck. It is a blatant lie. The balance sheets and the expenditure sheets show that Scotland pays more to the London Treasury and gets less back. We know that quite clearly. Like I said, there's 64 billion raised in tax revenues and we get 35 billion back. So we got a decision to make. Do we want to be stuck in an isolationist, inward-looking country as part of the United Kingdom, getting a parliament and a government we never voted for? Or are we going to become an independent country and join the world stage like every single normal independent country in the world? Are we going to make our own decisions for Scots, in Scotland? Or are we going to go along with this Brexit isolationist future, which is going to bankrupt our economy, and we're going to have to pay, the taxpayers are going to have to pay that money back over the next 20 years. So it's a bleak looking future for us. We voted, like I say, the last 6 elections for this independence. The Tories are referendum blocking it. They know they can continue to block it. They know they will continue to block it. And it's for the people of Scotland to stand up. We must and should have the right to choose a better future for us. And we shouldn't be governed by a party which we never voted for. So that's all I've got to say on this one. Take it away, make of it what I've told you. But have a good day.